Hello, good morning. Today is August 2nd, which means that Wit Month has officially begun. And so I've actually officially begun my first woman in translation book. So I started off with what I think will be a 5-star prediction. It's Eiza's Ballad by Magda Szabo, and I'm so excited about this book. You have no idea. um, I think the first Magda Szabo book I actually read was for Wit Month last year, The Door, after I'd seen a film adaptation of it and was just like completely enamored. And since then I've read a second Magda Szabo book, Abigail, which was one of my favorite books of Q2, and so now to actually be reading a third book of hers, I'm like over the moon. Yeah, so far Eiza's Ballad is not disappointing either. I actually read 100 pages of it this morning, so I'm about a third of the way through the book already, and I was really bummed that I had to put it down, to be quite honest, but I needed to like get myself ready for work. And I was really disappointed by that because I'm already really engrossed in the story, which doesn't surprise me because that's how it's been with the other two Magda Szabo books as well. But Eiza's Ballad starts off kind of sad in the same way that The Door started off, with a death. So this old woman, Eddie, her husband is dying of cancer. They've been married for nearly 50 years, and she's kind of grappling with his final day, the funeral arrangements, and what is life going to be like when he's gone. And their grown daughter, Eiza, basically comes back into town in order to take care of her mother and bring her to Budapest. And you're already starting to see the like comparisons starting to form between sort of the old world Hungary with Eddie, the older woman, and her daughter Eiza, who is representative of, I guess, the modernizing communist Hungary. And it's really interesting because some of it is just in their characterization, and then some of it is actually in what is going on around them. So in the case of Eddie, she is like terrified of electrical appliances. Like, one of the first things we learn about her is like she doesn't trust a toaster. And you also have her being really like this old country mouse who is moved from her home to the big city. And so far that's been really interesting. And then you have Eiza, who is like a woman of science. She is a doctor. She doesn't seem to believe in the superstitious Christian mythology that she kind of censures her mother for believing in. She also doesn't seem to put much store in like old customs that her like mother and father might have like practiced, especially when it comes to the funeral. She is very organized and clean and kind of has her own way of doing things. And so you're already seeing those differences coming to light, and it's very, very interesting because it's not so much impacting Eiza as it is Eddie, who is now having to adjust her whole way of being. But I think too, what has always captured me about Magda Szabo's writing is its clarity, its poetry, and the way in which she describes like the emotional states of her characters and like the emotional elements in their lives. So there's this moment already when Eddie is on the way to her husband Vince's funeral, and she's sad, but she also is described as having this awkward joy because she's looking forward to being able to see Vince once again. And in her mind, she has like come up with this list of things that she's going to tell him, like to let him, he might know about the house, but he might not know about like that Antal, who I believe is their ex-son-in-law, is going to be buying the house. Like, she's come up with these things that she plans to tell him when she sees him for the last time before he's interred. And when she gets to the funeral and the coffin is closed, it's like devastating to her because she's missed out on this last opportunity to look into the face of the man that she's been married to for 50 years. And it's those types of really poignant moments that Magda Szabo is so good at describing. And she does that again and again. And sometimes it's with moments like that that have such impact and such like, oof, it hits you right in the feels. And other times it's like about mundane things going on in the daily lives of these characters. But whatever it is, her ability to like describe the emotional and mental state of her characters in relation to their internal lives and in relation to the things going on externally, it blows my mind every single time. So that's kind of where I am right now. In the meantime, I do have work in the next few minutes, so I'm going to start doing that. But actually, a book that I had on hold with Libby, which is called The Unwomanly Face of War by Svetlana Alexievich, I believe, that just came in, and that is actually nonfiction translated. So I'm very interested in starting to listen to that today. And since for one of the rare moments in my professional career, I only have one meeting today, I should potentially be able to make a little headway with that as well, as long as there aren't too many fire drills or anything like that. So yeah, so I'll have 2 books for Women in Translation Month on the go, and I'm excited about that. But I will check in with you guys the next time I have any more updates with Magda Szabo or The Unwomanly Face of War. Okay, so I promise at some point in this vlog I will leave bed, but I basically live here. I work from here, I read from here, I watch TV from here, I write from here. Basically, I do everything from here. But yeah, you need a change of scenery at some point. But I did want to check in at the end of today's workday with a couple of comments. I guess more like 3 comments. The first of which is that I have a sneaking suspicion that this will end up being a very, very long vlog. So if you haven't gotten yourself a beverage and a drink, I would suggest doing so. And I think it's going to end up being long because I feel like I'm trying to cram like talking about 5 or 6 books into this. Originally, I think I had said 4, but then I have 2 other books that I'm reading for Women in Translation Month. So I figured, why leave them out? Like, it didn't make sense. So yeah, I have a feeling this will be long. Point 2 is that the book that I'm reading for my work book club for Women in Translation Month, Moonbath by Yannick Lehans, is in. It got here this morning. The package was absolutely saturated, like sopping wet. The actual cover of the book had some water on it when I opened it, but thankfully no damage to the pages or anything. But we are reading this for work. It's translated from French, but the author is from Haiti, and so it should be a really nice change of pace, and nice that I can actually include a BIPOC author, because I noticed I was lacking that when I was kind of looking over the list of books I was trying to read. And then point 3 is that I did actually start The Unwomanly Face of War. I'm about 20% into the audiobook. It's about 14 hours long, and I have a really sneaking suspicion that this is going to be a 5-star book for me already. Like, you know when you just feel it in your bones? Like, I feel it in my bones with this one, because not only is it on a topic that I'm really passionate about, Russian history is what I've studied, it's something that I'm really drawn to. I'm also really drawn to World War II history in general, but there's just something already about the tone of this book, the information that is being imparted to me by it. It's just already so impactful, more impactful than I think anything really I have read on World War II up until this point, maybe with the exception of like memoirs of the Holocaust. there is just something really, really powerful about this book. So The Unwomanly Face of War is essentially this oral history on Soviet women living through World War II, and the author, Svetlana Alexievich, her family has basically been preoccupied with World War II because they lost members of their family to it. They were involved in the conflict. She grew up hearing about it. And so she ends up actually interviewing all of these women who lived through the war and kind of chronicling their experiences. And I think some of the most powerful lines that have already happened are that she describes how she isn't writing a history of the war, she's writing a history of the human beings in the war, and that she is a historian of the soul, and she's really focused on the feelings and the emotions of these women, which is why I think it is so impactful at this point. I mean, I don't even know how much of it I will be able to talk about. The stories are so shocking in some cases, but also it's really the emotional toll of the war and that collective toll that is so important in this book. I mean, there have already been some really painful moments, and it's just been really eye-opening to the struggles that these women shared, not only in the war, whether they were on the front or nursing the sick or partisans or living on the front or driving trucks or being pilots or snipers or whatever the case may be. It had an emotional toll on them, and so many of these women were so young. There are a couple that have already spoken in this book, and by the age of 20, 21, they had white hair or silver hair because of the just struggle they went through. And many of them, because of the stress, their periods stopped and things like that. And this is the stuff that I have never seen discussed anywhere, and it's here. And I think that's part of why the censors tried to block a lot of this stuff from being discussed, because it's the filthy side of the war. It's not glorifying war or glorifying the participation of these women in the war. It's really getting to the underbelly of it all. I guess I'm about 3 hours into the book now, so I still have quite a ways to go, but it's already resonating with me on such a level. So I did want to just mention it briefly before I got any further into the book. But yeah, I am so satisfied, so pleased with this find. It's not often I read nonfiction in translation, so this was really a gem. But yeah, that's kind of where I am today. I don't think I'm going to end up doing any more reading, just because I have some writing that I want to get done, and then probably want to just unplug and watch a movie or something. But yes, just wanted to give you that update on The Unwomanly Face of War, because wow, how did I not know about this? Blowing my mind. Hello! Change of scenery that I promised. I'm outside briefly, but I just finished Eiza's Ballad. That book was a lot sadder than I anticipated. Not even like crying sad, just it sits with you and lingers a little bit, because I think what Magda Szabo has done here once again is create this really, really sympathetic cast of characters, and you feel for them. And I mean, the character of Eddie is just so heartbreaking. Here's an old woman who now has really lost her purpose in life because her husband has died and she's taken care of him. Her daughter is grown and self-sufficient and a modern woman, and Eddie is transplanted in Budapest, far away from everything that she has known, everything that is familiar, the people who are familiar, the furniture, everything. And her daughter kind of doesn't know what to do with her now that she's there. Like, her daughter had this big plan to get her to Budapest, to take care of her, provide her with a decent life, but once she's there, she doesn't know what to do or how to really meet Eddie where she's at, and there's just something really sad and frail about this older woman coming to that sort of situation. And so it was sad, it was heartbreaking. And so yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This is the third Magda Szabo book I've read, and I think I can safely say that she's one of my favorite authors at this point, because there is something just very beautiful about the way she writes about the human experience. And I mean, the thing is that her books are really character driven, like really character driven. So if that's not your bag, this might seem very slow paced for you, but I kind of really enjoy that element of it. And I enjoy the fact that the books seem to really be about life. It's like life and death and all the things that are happening in between, and all those things, they're mundane in a lot of cases. They're simple. They're not asking much of anyone in a way, but the emotional heft of them on the people that are experiencing them is what the real beauty is. And so I don't know what else to say. I really enjoyed it. I'm like trying to decide on what to rate the book, and right now I'm really leaning towards a 5 because I really did enjoy it. I really did enjoy the artistry of the human emotions. I enjoyed the fact that you had older main characters. I enjoyed Eddie's story, and I feel like it's just left an impression. Like, I'm here, I read it, finished it maybe 15-20 minutes ago, and there's still like this weight, this like contemplative feeling about it all. The more that I sit here and talk about it, is the more enamored I am with the story overall and what it manages to accomplish. But I do think that I don't know what book I'm gonna pick up next for this vlog, so hang tight on that front. I'll update you when I know. But I do know that I'm going to continue reading Unwomanly Faces of War, hopefully during work today. I still have like 11 hours of that audiobook left, even though I'm like 20% in, so it's a long one. But hopefully I have some downtime during work where I can actually listen to an audiobook and still get work done. So yeah. Hello, greetings from the book graveyard, which I would show you, except it is a tip. Have I mentioned that my parents randomly decided to have a yard sale this weekend? If not, that is currently why I'm in the book graveyard, because I'm basically giving them all the books that I've unhauled from Q1 and Q2, because have I made it to the bookstore to donate those books? No. So if people buy some books, great. Whatever is left over will be donated at some point. But I figured I should probably get affairs in order. As of right now, I'm like caught up on the most recent stack of books, which you will see in my Q3 unhaul when that's filmed, whenever that's filmed. But I did want to check in because I started and got through half of Garden by the Sea by Mercy Rotaretta. The book originally, like the description of it sort of gave me like Great Gatsby vibes because it's set in the 1920s, but it's set in Spain, and it's about these like gorgeous, wealthy, rich people, which just screams Great Gatsby to me. And I do think some of that is there, but the book is basically narrated by this gardener on this like villa in Spain, and he's been working there through a couple like changes of hands with the house. The current owners are this young couple who spend the summers there, and they often bring their friends, and they do wealthy rich people type stuff where they throw parties and get up to all sorts of mischief. So currently we've had a lion stay at the house in a cage, We've also had a very mischievous monkey that was up to no good. So yeah, these are like the filthy rich people who have way too much time on their hands. There have been some parties, and the gardener is kind of at this interesting sort of, I guess, intersection between the characters in the book, where it almost has like an upstairs downstairs feel of, say, like a Downton Abbey, where the gardener interacts with the other people who are part of the staff at the house and is on friendly terms with them, but the people who actually live in the house and their guests, they also interact with him and form relationships with him. And so he's kind of at like the perfect, like he's kind of in the perfect position to understand what's going on in the house. But we're just kind of getting to a point, I think we're in the fourth summer. So each chapter, which is arguably more a section than a chapter, covers a summer. So we're somewhere in the fourth summer, and there's some like mysterious stuff going on, not like mystery like whodunit, but like intrigue. So the mistress of the house, Senorita Rosa Maria, there seems to be something in her past that we're slowly but surely learning about, and like people from her past have reappeared very briefly. So I guess we're gonna find out more about that. But yeah, right now it's this gardener having like this, it's almost like the people in the house are the fish in a fishbowl, and he's looking in and seeing all of the like crazy stuff that's going on that they do, like the affairs that they have, and the like coming and going to Barcelona on a whim to see like a play, or to just like jet off to France, or whatever the case may be. So it's very much a book about wealthy people getting up to no good, and the people that work for them kind of watching, observing, maybe judging them just a little bit. You'll likely get another update on this book, hopefully some more on Unwomanly Face of War, and then I will check in with the 2 other Whit Month books that I have. So I think a total of 5 books for Whit Month this year, which isn't too shabby in my opinion. Let's see if I get through all of them, but I'm pretty confident about that. Anyway, I should go back to work. Actually, I'm on my lunch hour, so I should eat something, but I will check in with you later. Bye. Wow, hello, hi. It's been a few days since I checked in, having just read about half of Garden by the Sea by Mercy Rotaretta, and I did finish it the next day as I had anticipated, but then life happened and I spent an evening prepping for a yard sale, and then I spent an entire day operating said yard sale, and now it's Sunday and I'm trying to do a little bit of filming so that I have content for you guys, and was just like, I probably should give my final thoughts on Garden by the Sea before I forget them all. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I thought there was potential for it to be really fabulous, but there's always a little bit of a part of me that worries that something might be a little bit too literary and a little bit too obtuse or too abstract, and then I'm just gonna be like, what did I just read? And it'll just go clear over my head. But that wasn't the case here. I definitely feel that in the second half of the book, things start to move a little bit more. Like, I can say that the beginning of the book is very quiet, in that there's not a whole lot happening apart from the gardener observing these wealthy people getting up to wealthy people things. But things happen in the second half of the book. Basically, right after I had vlogged my thoughts on the book last time, things happened. And it really does make me think that this is kind of like a Spanish or Catalan version of The Great Gatsby, because I do feel like there is a character in this book that is very, very reminiscent of a Jay Gatsby character, and I'm not going to say which character it is, but there is something about that character that just screams Great Gatsby. I think there is this like devil may care Roaring Twenties type attitude among a lot of the characters, but then there's also this undercurrent of like darker, deeper, more intense emotions kind of under the surface that by the end of the book do actually kind of bubble over, which is why I do feel that the second half of the book, things happen, and it was really, really enjoyable. And I think I'm going to end up giving it 4 stars because I really did enjoy it, and I do think that I would be really interested in reading other books by this author. But there is just something here that is beautiful, and I do think that the more that I read the book was more that I began to understand the character of the gardener. And I think that as much as he is a gardener who's tending to the flowers and has this knowledge of sort of the flora in this garden by the sea, he's also tending to and nurturing the people around him in a way, because he is this sounding board for a lot of them, and this kind of, he has an influence on them, I guess is the best way to say it. And part of me feels that this is a book that would really do well with a reread, and like a really critical rereading, because all of these flowers keep getting mentioned, and I know flowers have a lot of like meaning and symbolism behind the different species, or the different, is that what it's called? Yes, species. So part of me would love to read this and kind of look up all of these flowers and figure out what those meanings are, because I do feel like the writer was that intentional, and so likely the flowers do have meaning as well. So yeah, this was fabulous, and I can't wait to read more by this author. I think it was really fun. It was also a really quick read. So yeah, that's it. Hello. I am a mess. I am covered in flour. Oh, I just got it all over my chin. I'm so attractive right now. I'm in the middle of making rough puff pastry so that I can make patis de natas for my grandmother's 100th birthday, which we're celebrating next weekend. And I am listening to the Unwomanly Face of War still. I am about 75% into the audiobook, and since I'm going to be baking all day, this is keeping me company. But oh my god, I just listened to a part and was literally like sobbing. And this book is just so mind-blowing, like the realities that these women faced. And this one story that I just read, where this woman goes to the front to be with her husband, and she ends up eventually getting like assigned as an assistant nurse so that she can stay with him. And they do all this stuff together, and then he ends up getting wounded by like an exploding bullet, I think is what they said. And by the time they get him to a hospital, he's already experiencing blood poisoning. And so they know he's dying. And the way she described his final days, his final hours, oh man, yeah, that was rough. Like, there have been some really sad moments, but for whatever reason, that one took the cake. And yeah, you can probably see a little bit that my eyes are a mess, but I just felt like I needed to report back on that. I should finish it today. That's the goal, especially since there's someone else waiting, so I can't renew it. So I kind of need to finish it. But yeah, and I'm sorry my arm is like shaking like nobody's business right now. I've been rolling and unrolling, and my arm is just shot right now. But yeah, just needed to report back on that. I'll check in a little bit later with a final thought on Unwomanly Face of War. Hello, it's been a minute since I checked in. I think the last time I checked in, I might have been entirely covered in flour. from baking, and I ended up finishing Unwomanly Face of War, but I don't think I updated you because by the time I finished actually doing the prep, so making the rough puff pastry, making 40 of these gigantic cookies and putting them in the freezer, cleaning, which is my least favorite part of cooking, I was wiped out. My back was aching and I slept so hard that evening. So I don't think I actually checked in, but I did finish Unwomanly Face of War and I really loved it. I mean, I feel like you have to do something really bad for me to not enjoy a book on Russian history, and especially a book on Russian history focusing on women. Like, you would have had to screw up royally for me not to enjoy it. But that is to say that I actually think it was really, really well written. And I mean, let's just put it this way. It's not going to be a book for everyone because it's not necessarily that it has like a plot, really, because it's not fiction. And even sort of in the traditional style of like nonfiction, there's something about the structure that is unlike those types of traditional nonfiction, because it really is this collection of oral histories that has now been documented in writing. But I think that in listening to it, there was something really magical about the experience, because this is oral history, so it was these women telling Svetlana Alexievich what they went through. So there's something in the way that the stories are told by a person that just made them really, really impactful. But I do think the way in which these women dealt with living through a war when they were on the front, and also the way that they were then treated after the war, was sort of heartbreaking to me, because essentially all of these women who'd worked on the front and had served their country and fought in this war, like actually fought in the war, they go back to being civilians and they're treated like garbage because they were surrounded by men in the military. It's just assumed that they were loose women and sleeping around and doing all of this sort of thing. And so, like, hearing those stories and hearing also what they dealt with after the war was really, really impactful, and unlike anything I had ever really read or experienced. So yeah, I did finish that, ended up giving it 5 stars. I thought it was really, really, really amazing. And now as I said, I listened to it as an audiobook. It's now one of these books, I have a couple from this year that I listened to it as an audiobook, and because I enjoyed it so much, I do think that I'm going to go ahead and buy a physical copy, because I would certainly love to have it in my collection to reread at some point, or in this case, maybe like go through and pick out snippets and read. So yeah. In other news, I did start, I think, my 4th Whit Month read, and that is Fires of Autumn by Irene Namrovsky, which I have been so excited about starting, like, since I bought this book. So it's finally here. I am through part 1 of the book, so I'm around 90 pages into it, and I'm really enjoying it, as I kind of expected. So Irene Namrovsky is this author who wrote in French, but she was originally from Russia, I believe, and she was Jewish, and she wrote quite a few novels, and I believe even a short story collection that I own. But unfortunately, she was deported with the Jews during the Holocaust and was murdered in a concentration camp. So a lot of her works in recent years have sort of started to be translated in English. This is described as being kind of like a prequel to Sweet Frances, which was the first of her books that I read and one that I have raved about on this channel. But this is focused on the First World War, the interwar years, and then World War II. But yeah, so the first kind of allusion to World War I that we have is the murder of the Archduke, which kind of sets it off. But before that, like, these are just Parisians living their Parisian lives, eating together, drinking together, walking on the Champs-Elysees, all that type of fun stuff. And then the war hits, and some of these individuals are sent into the trenches. I'm gonna keep reading. I do think it's a fairly quick read. I'm already 90 pages in, and it flew by, so I should probably be able to finish it. It's Tuesday, probably Thursday at the latest would be my guess. But in the meantime, I'm gonna go back to work. This was just a quick interlude before I finish up for the day, but I hope you're all well, and I'll chat with you later. Bye. Hello! Checking in, taking advantage of the fact that I don't look like a hot mess for once, because I realized it's been a couple of days since I updated you on any of the books that I've been reading, and the first one I wanted to talk about was Moonbath by Yannick Lehans, which I managed to read and finish in time for my work book club, which is good considering it was my turn to lead the discussion. And I think I ended up giving this 3 stars, but I don't honestly know how to talk about this book yet. Like, it's a bit of a fever dream, and I think it's a book that definitely needs a reread. Like, I don't think you grasp it all the first time around. And I would say that it's not the easiest book to read. The closest thing I can think to, like, compare it to, is last year when I read The Besieged City. Granted, with The Besieged City, like, I did not like that book. I did not enjoy any aspect of reading it. I just felt really stupid and just kind of left it like, WTF did I read? I have no idea. This book, I didn't have such a visceral reaction to, and I think in talking about it with the book club, I learned to appreciate it a little bit more. It is a really violent book, so I don't think that it's going to be for everyone. There is a lot of sexual violence, there is like gory violence that's at least mentioned towards the end of the book, and a lot of the language itself is just very, very violent. The imagery, very, very violent. And I think part of that is to make you feel uncomfortable, because the book is about this family living in rural Haiti over the course of like 80 to 100 years, and it's following them kind of through the like different political struggles and turmoils of the time period and the difficulties that they face as a family, kind of being the have-nots in this society. It's a lot, and I think it's a book that it's meant to be really ambiguous, which I think is part of why one reading of it isn't sufficient, because you do always have these blendings of things happening. Like with religion, which is a huge part of this book, you have talk about sort of voodoo and the practice of it, which is not only religious and spiritual but also cultural for these individuals, and then how that interacts with Roman Catholicism, and in some cases the individuals who practice voodoo are also going to church and what that looks like. And there's just the blurring of time. Like, I feel like for most of the book you don't necessarily know exactly where in time you are, and you just kind of need to be okay with that. And it's definitely a different book than I have read recently. I didn't hate it, but it's definitely a book that required a more active reading than I readily understood when I went into it. But it was definitely an interesting read. I loved the elements that were talking about voodoo as religion and spirit, like a spiritual practice and a cultural element. I thought that was really, really interesting. I also, from what little bits of Haitian history I could kind of pull out of it, I was very interested in learning more. So I think this was a success. It's just definitely not going to be a book for everyone. And then the other book that I'm in the process of reading, and I think I don't even remember where I left off. I think I have 60 or 70 pages left in Fires of Autumn, but I've been slowly reading this and kind of savoring it because I am really enjoying it. The part that I've read most recently is taking place after World War I, and the main character is living through the Roaring 20s in Paris. And it's a very weird time for this character, Bernard, because he's come back from the war and he wants to make money fast and he wants to just enjoy life. He's kind of on a hedonistic bent, and it's all about him adjusting and trying to acquire wealth quickly and just enjoying life and having affairs and being out late at night, and how he's changed from the man that he was according to his own mother. And there's something really sad about the way this character is going about living. It's not as carefree as you would hope, being that this individual is a war hero. But there's something definitely there, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this concludes, because I think the section I'm in goes until 1936, and then the last section of the book, which is I think the shortest section, goes from 1936 to 41. So I'm really, really curious to see what happens to Bernard as he's trying to navigate these interwar years and trying to live life. And it's, again, Irene Namrovsky with the observations about humans and people during this time just blows my mind. So I'm really enjoying it. This is a much easier read for me. I think the writing style is more straightforward. I understand the story more. There's something definitely appealing about it. I'm very, very interested in seeing where this goes. Hi there. So, I'm a bit of a vlog fail because I am in the middle of editing this vlog to go live in September. It was meant to go live at the end of August. Didn't happen. But I got to the end and realized that I didn't film a closing clip or ever film a clip talking about finishing Fires of Autumn, because apparently I am the worst vlogger on the planet. So hi, I'm here to check in, wrap up this vlog, and also talk about having finished Fires of Autumn by Irene Namrovsky. And I think I ended up giving it a 4, but it's been a few days, and I don't think it left as big of an impression on me as her other book did, Sweet Frances, or Frances, rather. And so I'm kind of between maybe downgrading it to a 3.5, a high 3.5, or leaving it as a low 4. But I did still enjoy it. I thought the story was really interesting, kind of seeing the journey that Bernard as a man goes through, basically from being a young man who glorifies war and being a soldier to being one that is disillusioned by what he sees in the trenches, and then coming back to society as a young man and really living it up, sort of Roaring 20s style, and how he matures and sort of the failures and the missteps that he makes along the way as a married man and as a father, with the prospect of World War II looming over him and his family and basically the French people. And if you kind of look at it more widely, then basically all of Europe at this time. And I'm definitely going through a phase where I'm very interested in both World War I and these interwar years, because I just finished reading Square Haunting, which was for the History Challenge, which is a book set in London during the interwar years predominantly. So it seems to be a phase for me. But yeah, that's me trying to wrap up because I'm a fail, as I said at the beginning of this, and didn't record anything talking about the third section of, is it the third section? Yes, must be the third section of Fires of Autumn. So that's me doing that. Anyway, that is that for this really long vlog. Like, really long. I'm so sorry, guys. I like to talk a lot and don't seem to be able to just do very vague or generalized check-ins. My bad. But if you made it through to this point, thank you so much. Leave me an ice cream emoji. Do we have an ice cream emoji? Leave me an ice cream emoji so I know that you got here and I can send you a pint of ice cream. Just kidding. But if I could, I would. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!